personal take on it.
Well, it turns out Nancy Pelosi wants to extend the age to own a nail gun to 21. So that's exciting. That should be taken care of. There's some Republican support for that.
I'm sitting here thinking,
there should never be a situation in where you think you alone can solve the problem by shooting at law enforcement.
no.
I just want to say that. Like, there's no way you're going to solve the problem by attempting that.
Look, not especially going on the offensive. Like you're going on the offensive. Like,
right.
Don't get me wrong. Like, if I don't know who the fuck is breaking into my house, I'm probably going to be shooting back. Like, especially if I have no fucking idea that I'm doing something wrong and somebody's just breaking into my house.
I can't stop my lawnmower with my thumb. That's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. You stick your head up, it's gonna get shot down.
It's gonna get shot down.
Like that's real fucking dumb.
It is time now for something positive.
We might be headed to the promised land.
The truth and finding our external liberty once we internally liberate ourselves.
The problem can only be solved when there is a kind of coalition of conscience.
Because that is how it works.
This is the beginning. It is not the finale. And that's why we're here. And that's why we rally.
We've got to be that creative minority.
Find a way to get in the way. I got in trouble. It was good trouble. It was necessary trouble.
Frankly, I know we've got to do something.
And we're back. What I thought was amazing was, so I recorded with the guys from Audio Pong, Marco and Zach. They're really good guys, and I don't know how my border idea came up. And I was like, because I was telling them, I'm so progressive, I don't even believe in a border. And I started explaining it, and it was so weird that Marco was like, later in the conversation, he was like, that's really not a bad idea. Why have we never thought about it that way? And I was like, ooh, I converted somebody. So we have these ideas because of open conversations, and I think that's what's exciting. He took a political test, and turns out he's libertarian. I didn't need a political test to tell me where I stood.
Right. And that's the thing is like, with the thing about libertarians and progressives is that a true libertarian, I would say, the ones that are not left, they're not right, they're straight down the center. It's like most of us don't give a shit. We just don't think the government should have the kind of authority it does.
Right.
And it's not that we don't give a shit, it's that it's there are certain goals that we think are worthwhile and worth moving towards. It's just that we don't think the government should have as big of a role as it does,
You mean like reaching into a woman's uterus or into a schoolroom with cameras and microphones to burn the books and fire the teeth? Right. Okay. All right. Because somebody had said this week that Republicans are the only thing standing between an overreaching, ever-expanding government and the people.
That's
and I was like,
joke
what?
If I've ever heard one.
That is a
fucking joke, dude.
They're both scope creeping, but one decided to stay out of our uteruses, and the other was like, all right. But so Jeffrey, he went to the FBI field office with a nail gun and an AR-15 and chose to shoot an FBI agent with a nail. I don't want to laugh at this because it's very serious, the undertones of what's going on with rallying people to want to attack the FBI agents and judges and stuff. But I just have to take a minute and ask, if you were going to go and attack the FBI, would you choose to shoot a nail or an armor-piercing bullet?
I'm not so dumb as to think that I'm going to survive that encounter. Realistically, like,
so don't do it to begin with.
Do it.
But don't waste your time with a nail gun. That's what I don't know. Like, was he going to remodel?
Like that's personal, is what that is. That is personal. Okay. Don't fucking do that shit. That's really dumb. Like, yeah, like that. Here's the thing. Like, as the resident gun owner on the podcast, there is a time and a place to use your firearms. There absolutely is. And if you're going to show up at an FBI field office with a fucking gun, don't expect to survive it. Number one. Right. Like, you're not going to prove anything. You're not going to start the next civil war by doing it. What you're going to do is you're going to get yourself shot.
Right.
And, you know, it's not going to play out.
In a cornfield. Like, he had like seemingly no plan. Is this one of those things where everybody's like, we're going to yell surprise on the count of 3, and then at 3, one person goes, ah!
Like, no, what I would argue is that, you know, when you talk about mental illness and firearm ownership, this is what mental illness and firearm ownership looks like. Like, no rational firearm owner is going to go, no, this is a great idea. No rational firearm owner is going to do that. Like, that's not a rational firearm owner. That is somebody who is, I would say, you know, in mental distress.
Me too.
And either because they have, you know, fallen into the world of conspiracy theories, or they have a, you know, suicide by cop wish.
Right. Okay.
That's my personal take on it.
Well, it turns out Nancy Pelosi wants to extend the age to own a nail gun to 21. So that's exciting. That should be taken care of. There's some Republican support for that.
I'm sitting here thinking,
there should never be a situation in where you think you alone can solve the problem by shooting at law enforcement. No. I just want to say that. Like, there's no way you're going to solve the problem by attempting that.
Look, especially going on the offensive. Like, you're going on the offensive. Like,
right.
Don't get me wrong. Like, you know, if I don't know who the fuck is breaking into my house, I'm probably going to be shooting back. Like, especially if I have no fucking idea that I'm doing something wrong and somebody's just breaking into my house.
I can't stop my lawnmower with my thumb. That's what I'm trying to say.
You know, exactly. You know, you stick your head up, it's going to get shot down.
It's going to get shot down.
Like, that's real fucking dumb. You know, and that's the thing is, like, that's why we have laws like Castle Doctrine, for example, and why there are times when, you know, the feds are the cops are completely in the wrong. They get shot at, and the person that, you know, is in the house that was, you know, wrongfully invaded, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
They're cleared of all charges because, you know, you came into their castle without any. This is why no-knock warrants, kind of as a throwback to the last episode, this is why no-knock warrants are a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if the person that is in the house doesn't necessarily know that something's going to be happening, like, don't get me wrong, you know, show up in force, have a warrant, make it clear that you're coming in, you know, but like these, you know, first thing in the morning, like, kick in doors, you know, that kind of shit is like not.
That's not what happened with Donald Trump. I had a friend.
No, his lawyer had it and was fucking on the property while it was being searched,
and he was watching it on CCTV, like closed circuit TV. I had a friend, he was dealing pot, he had 4 pounds in his house, the cops found the door unlocked, walked in, arrested him, took his weed. He got off scot-free because the door was unlocked and they just walked in, because they never knocked. They never announced themselves.
Yep. And that's the thing is like, you can't do shit like that. Now, no-knock warrants, they're a thing, but no-knock warrants are how people get killed. Cops or bystanders. It's how Breonna Taylor.
Right.
You know, no-knock warrants are a problem. Like if the first thing that happens is that you're just busting in through the door and all hell is breaking loose. Yeah, that puts cops in danger. That's a dumb fucking move. Like, I get it, you don't want evidence destroyed.
Right.
But the thing is that, you know, when you're doing stuff like this, it's not that it should be that you already have evidence that there's a crime. You're just there to shore up how much of a crime there is.
Right. And if you cared about destroying evidence, you'd get a water key and turn off the water main before you fucking went in. You wouldn't have to worry about the destruction of evidence if you turned off the toilet from flushing, you know?
Exactly. So yeah. I hate no-knock warrants. I mean,
I do too.
There are rational people out there who are like, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. So Serena retired. I just want to get a little minute in there of her, because I was like standing real close to the TV when that came on, and her face was just stoic. She retired, and she was like, "I feel like I'm finally free." And they were like, "Well, what do you mean by that metaphor?" And she was like, "It isn't a metaphor. I feel free." And I just wanted to acknowledge that Serena Williams is one of the top athletes of all time. I think, like, comparable to Jordan or Gretzky.
Oh, absolutely. Like, she was a powerhouse.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for her to, as a black woman, as an athlete, as a woman, to say that, it's a really strong statement of the life she's lived, to say, I now finally feel free. Like, free out of bondage to live my own life, like a Roman slave, finally, like a gladiator getting the thumbs up. She gets to retire, and God damn, that's so cool.
It's wild.
So our first Iranian story, it's cool. Iran tried to assassinate John Bolton this week. John Bolton is who was he? He was in Trump's national security circles. He's a hawk, a war hawk. He like believes in raining pain down on governments that defy us. Like, he's not a great guy.
He's problematic.
But they said they were doing it in retaliation for Trump killing one of their generals, and it made me laugh because I was like, Iran thinks Bolton is important. Like, he wrote a book, and now they think, but I can see why they picked him. It's just they don't see his irrelevance currently, I think.
Well, it's not about his relevance currently. It's about revenge for what happened under Trump's presidency.
Okay, because they think that he would be the one that would engineer that.
He was part of it. He absolutely was part of that. No, he was part of that strike on that Iranian general in Iraq.
Were they wrong to kill that Iranian general?
That was not the smartest move. Let's be real clear about that.
Smart, but was there imminent danger that they needed to eliminate by eliminating him? Because at the time they were saying he was planning raids and attacks on our embassies and stuff, and that he needed to be taken out.
Well, you could say that he absolutely was part of that. You could absolutely say he was a problem because he was supplying weapons to people who kept attacking our bases in Iraq.
Right.
He was, supplying Iraqi separatists essentially.
Right. And he was doing that
at this point.
He was doing that not because of the U.S.'s restrictions in Iran, but just because he opposed our presence in a neighboring country. So it wasn't like he was taking a political stand against us. He was just trying to eliminate soldiers from an area he wanted to occupy.
That he wanted influence. That he wanted the Iranians to have influence. Yeah, that was very much what was going on there.
And then
he was also supplying, I want to say, to what is it, Hezbollah?
Right. Lebanon. Okay.
So I mean, was he a threat? Yeah, he was a threat to us. He was a threat to our allies.
Iranian missiles then attacking one of our installations in Syria, like on the Syrian border. The day after that was retaliation, they said, for this killing. So it's a 2-for-1 now. Is that what it is?
Well, that's essentially what they were doing.
I mean, Iran, if you don't want to be treated like dicks, stop acting like dicks. You know what I mean?
Right. So that's where all of these problems come in. Is that it's just a shit show.
Yeah.
I don't think it was the wisest idea. It definitely, we shouldn't have killed him. We should,
Well,
we should have been prepared for what was about to happen afterwards, where we had a missile barrage strike one of our camps, one of our bases.
Right.
So
yeah, which Donald Trump went on to minimize and say that they just had some headaches. There was no brain trauma there, and that led to a whole nother controversy. So
yep.
And by the way, the Justice Department, the FBI stopped this assassination of a Republican. So, I mean, John Bolton has to know this stuff is going to happen from time to time. I wonder if he ever considered that it would in reality happen,
I mean, let's be real honest. Look at what happened with Salmon Rushdie.
Wow, my next story, yes. Let's do it, because does this mean Iran is gaining force in the region?
Iran has always had that ability.
Yeah, of course.
Like that's one of the things that you have to remember about.
But it's not like Rushdie wrote this book yesterday.
No, this has been a long time coming. So this is entirely different.
Yeah. What happened? Why would they go after him?
It's not. It's more religious than it is, I would say, political. Unfortunately.
Okay. I got you.
So
he wrote a book that the Iran government at the time saw was evil, like the devil, like satanic.
The satanic verses, yeah,
right.
And I have yet to read the satanic verses, but basically the premise is that I think it was that instead of the information coming from God to the Prophet Muhammad, it actually came from the devil.
Wow. Okay.
And that royally pissed off a lot of people.
Well, everybody has their right. It's a right.
So. Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool. That was one of my stories. I don't know much about Salmon Rushdie either. So
I really don't either.
That's awesome. That's fine. Polio, Jeffrey? Polio?
All right.
Seriously?
Let's talk about polio.
Yeah, do it.
So one of the things that we have to remember about polio is that there's a couple of different ways in which polio, the polio vaccine is delivered. Primarily we get the inactive polio virus shot when we're babies. Like there's 4 shots that we get. But in places where it is hard to get people vaccinated, they have something called the oral polio vaccine. And that one actually contains live polio culture. So in order to get people vaccinated with that, these are places that typically don't get a whole lot of visits by doctors. So you have to make these things kind of as effective as possible in the pill form. Now, with one of the things, with the rise of, I would say, sewage testing, there's something unique that we need to consider. And I don't have an answer for this. This is simply a question that, maybe something we can ask Dan at some point. So what they're finding, by doing sewage testing is they're finding polio virus. We, in the United States, recently had a case of somebody that had polio who wasn't vaccinated. London has some cases. For the majority of people, much like COVID, polio doesn't do anything. Some people even just, they get an upset stomach.
Right, like the shingles vaccine or shingles virus.
But there are people who become paralyzed because it attacks nerves. And so that's how you end up with people that are paralyzed, like FDR. But one of the bigger problems that we had at the turn of the 20th century was you had people who would have their lungs get paralyzed, and so they would end up in an iron lung.
Oof.
Now, luckily, most of our parents, took us in for our normal vaccines when we were babies, and polio virus is part of that.
How do you find out? How do you find out what vaccinations you got? That was a big question on Twitter today. How do I know if I got the polio vaccine?
So what you'll have to do is you'll have to do a records request from either the hospital. Sometimes it's the state, depending on where you grew up. So like I have, 2 sets of records, essentially. I have vaccines that I got when I lived in Montana and the vaccines that I've got since I've lived in Washington. I only lived in Arizona for a short time. I didn't get any vaccines during that. But you can get all of that standardized, and then you'll have a complete record of what you've had done. Now, since I want to say 2000, I won't, well, I think definitely longer, but especially since 2000, kids get 4 polio shots right away, right after they're born. It's like 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, and then a year, I want to say, is what it is. But they also, you can also get a polio vaccine one time as an adult. And so this is actually something that
interesting.
This is actually something that, like, if you go to places like, for example, India, for example, there's a vaccine requirement. And so there are certain places in the world that if you're going to travel to, they actually recommend you getting the polio shot before you go.
Yes, right. And if you're in the military, you just get that in your
Yeah,
fucking
if you're in the military, you get that. There's a whole host of vaccines you get when you're in the military. So
right, based on where you're going, right?
And some just based on the fact that you're in the military.
Right. But polio is a real thing. It really affects people, and it affects you longer term than shorter term. You might not know you have it. So I get so frustrated with anti-vaxxers in this new age of vaccine information and creation, and that we can solve so many problems, and we decide to bring things back like smallpox and measles and polio. What's the easiest way to destroy a country is just to subvert its health. Its public health. And Vladimir Putin has admitted to doing that, to funding that here. And so for me, anti-vaxxers are the lowest form of American. Sorry.
They're unfortunately everybody is susceptible to, it's, for example, Democrats are susceptible to misinformation that looks like, fucking scientific findings.
Agreed.
And Republicans, conservative-leaning folks, are, conspiracy theories about, the government and this, that, and the other.
I mean, I don't mind somebody going to the doctor and the doctor saying, these are the consequences of this vaccine. They might be harmful to you in your situation, and them saying, I don't want to get it. It's another thing for somebody to go on Facebook and go, this is what's meant for me, so you shouldn't do it either. That's the people I have a problem with.
Right, exactly. Like, I get it. Some people will never be able to get vaccinated. That's cool. That's why the vaccinations exist for the rest of us.
Exactly.
Like, we take on that burden of getting vaccinated, so that way we reduce the risk to you. That's the whole fucking point.
Right.
But now let's go back to this. We haven't really done a whole lot in terms of wastewater monitoring. This is something that's relatively new to be able to see what kind of information we have now.
Yeah, that came out in the later part of the first year of COVID, right? Or maybe 20.
I want to say that it was starting to happen like 1920.
Oh, 1920?
No.
Oh, 2019,
2020. So the thing about wastewater, this is a relatively new thing.
It's cool though. Right.
It is.
Right.
It's cool. But here's my grand question. And this, I don't have an answer to. This isn't some big thing. This is me being scientifically minded and not knowing the answer is that, it's easy to sit down and start panicking because, we do have a case of live polio in the country from somebody who is unvaccinated.
Right.
And we are detecting polio virus in the wastewater.
Right.
But here's the thing. When you get vaccinated for a disease, that doesn't mean you don't get the disease. What it means is that your body understands what to do when you get the disease.
Gotcha.
So, to me, the idea that, we got vaccinated, polio ceased to exist, that doesn't make any sense logically to me. Same with, like, say, smallpox, for example. But I don't know. Like, can we test wastewater to see if smallpox is in wastewater? Because, in theory, people should have been vaccinated for smallpox. That said, if polio still actually circulates around and, our bodies have just, because we're vaccinated, we know how to deal with polio, it wouldn't surprise me that we find it in wastewater because if you get it and your body fights it off, it leaves as excrement one way or another, whether it's urine, whether it's feces, it goes.
Correct.
Like every time you have a disease, your body fights it off, it gets thrown away. It's waste. It's filtered out of the body.
I think a virus goes into your body, attaches, becomes infectious, and then dies off. But if it can't attach in your body to become infectious, it just dies, and therefore dies out. But
you still find the material.
Right.
So,
well, I mean,
transmission might be difficult to prove,
right?
Because once again, we're only looking for symptomatic cases most of the time. We're not just like, we're not just getting tested randomly to see, hey, do you have polio?
Right.
Because that's, we've never really had that kind of a test. Something that's rapid like we've had with COVID, for example. So it's hard to say, hey, have you, do you have this disease actively at this time? It could be that it's been circulating around for a long time, but because of vaccinations, are most of us just we'll never have severe symptoms. Like the rest of the symptoms.
We need to get Dan back on for this. Does
The
a virus have a half-life so that when it circulates every time becomes weaker until eventually it dies off?
Well, if that was the case, we wouldn't be talking about COVID the way that we are. But instead, COVID is spreading.
But it's getting weaker.
But it's getting weaker. But like everything else, when you look at the theory of evolution, the goal of any living organism is to survive, and you don't survive by killing your host.
Right, but what I'm saying is if polio weakened for 50 years, eventually it became so weak it was non-existent because it couldn't replicate anymore. It was just had nowhere
it would still replicate because it could survive in the system. It's just where? That's a grand question, and I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah.
But like I said,
probably monkeys or squirrels or any number of warm-blooded animals.
But there are also places in the world where you don't have the same kind of vaccine participation and rates.
Right.
Polio is particularly endemic to Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Yeah, and at parts of Africa too.
Exactly. So, sure, there's the possibility that it came from one of those regions. That's absolutely a possibility. But then you have the question of, has polio been transmitting around the country? And, thanks to wastewater, analysis now, we're just starting to finally understand because like I said, our typical testing method, as far as I'm aware, has been, we test who's symptomatic.
Right. We see the signs. Right.
It doesn't that, and the things is that, for the average person that experiences polio, it looks like a whole host of, cold symptoms that you have. Upset stomach, bowel issues, cough, things like that. It's like shit that makes you go, yeah, I got the cold or the flu, not polio.
But then you also have signs of Guillain-Barré syndrome where your feet start to go numb and then your ankles and up your legs until you're paralyzed.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
So but thanks to vaccines, that really doesn't happen all that much anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen at all, really, thanks to vaccines. And, the vaccine that was developed for polio is one that is particularly robust. And I fully expect that at some point we will get a SARS vaccine that will be particularly robust. And I'm looking forward to that. I would also love to see a flu vaccine that's particularly robust too.
I just worry that people are going to get tired of the word vaccination before these revolutionary things become
think about it. Well, think about it this way. It's like
COVID, monkeypox. Now we got polio. Well, no, that people they're making this stuff up just to push vaccines on us until they find one we'll take. But I think I don't want that people to think that because this is real warfare. When you talked about a battlefield, this is warfare. This is weakening a country from the inside out.
Like I said, at the beginning of COVID, if you really wanted to test America's resilience and test America's resolve, if Trump had said that the COVID, virus was, a threat from China and that it was your patriotic duty to get vaccinated, you would have had, every conservative numbnuts line up, wearing star-spangled everything to get their vaccine.
And that's closer to the truth. It's not. China didn't send the virus over here, but I'll tell you, Russia used it for everything it was worth.
Oh, absolutely.
In rhetoric and propaganda on the internet, So
and China does too. That's the other thing. China's in fact saying that COVID actually came from the U.S. So, that's their prerogative.
But
and
it didn't come intentionally from anywhere.
Well, it didn't. I don't think it came intentionally. Like mathematically speaking, we have more proof that it was zoonotically transferred, most likely because somebody ate a fucking bat.
Correct. In a wet market, which is just an open air market where they're in 90% of the countries. China didn't send it to us. We didn't send it to China. Sorry, Africa, Europe didn't send it to you. It just happened. But what people put a spin on it politically was to weaken or strengthen the country.
Exactly. And mathematically speaking, we have more proof that a lot of these viruses are animal born anyways. Why? Because,
Right.
typically some of these viruses are born out of the fact that, people are eating things that are not realistically food. You look at the Ebola virus, where does that come from? Bats in Africa.
Right. Well, when you're digging up guano in caves so that you can use it as fertilizer or, then suddenly, yeah, you're going to get these diseases. That's what's going to happen because a guy in China digging in a cave doesn't have a respiratory suit, that
Exactly.
that lives up to the FDA's approval. So,
and so it's why it's like, conspiracy theories, I love to hear them, but there's rarely ever one that makes me go, you know what, that one
yeah.
actually had, like, don't get me wrong, out of all of them, I will still say that the lab leak theory has the most credence of the conspiracy theories. Like, I'm not saying that has the most credence, period. It has the most credence of the conspiracy theories because accidents in labs happen. And in a place like China, nobody's going to say, oops, I fucked up and got infected with a virus and expect to live.
But I think the story was that a scientist brought it home to eat after he had used it for testing.
Now, that was one story.
That's just ridiculous on its face. My point is, if you don't think vaccines are for you, then don't take the vaccine. But stop telling other people what to do with their lives. Like, stop spreading that. What's good for you is not necessarily good for your friend, and you don't know your friend well enough to give them that advice. So
here's where I'll push back on that. Don't take the vaccine if it's not good for you because there are health issues associated with it.
Correct.
Let's make that really clear. Like, if you don't want to take the vaccines, take vaccines simply because you don't want to take vaccines, well, welcome to the anti-vaxxer club. Your meetings are every Wednesday if you survive.
Right, but stop getting in groups and like sharing that information with others. It's your personal belief. It's your personal belief. Stop tricking other people into believing it's bad so they'll side with you so you have someone to talk to. That's my point. An anti-vaxxer just wants another anti-vaxxer to be friends with to validate each other back and forth. Stop lying. Stop lying to get people on your side.
It's like I don't need to meet with people who are pro-vax in order to, sit down and have the conversation about, oh yeah, no, this is why I believe in vax. It's like I know why vaccines work. I don't get this as sick. That's what happens.
Well, why is it?
And I don't really. And that's just what it's supposed to do.
Why is it the first thing anti-vaxxers want to talk about? Why is it their whole conversation? Why can't they talk about cake and pie and other stuff? They just have to tell me that vaccines are bad every single time.
Hey, an anti-vaxxer, vegan, atheist, CrossFitter walks into a bar. What do they talk about first?
God knows.
But that's just it. It's like, there's no question that vaccines work, when you don't get as sick, when you don't necessarily have to worry about dying as much. I mean, the data is pretty fucking clear on vaccines, prior to COVID and the COVID vaccine itself.
But Jeffrey, one day this guy, he got a vaccination and a month later he became autistic. So now every vaccine is bad all the time, forevermore.
He was autistic before the fucking vaccine.
Yeah, I know that. And autism is a spectrum, and we're all on that spectrum, so you can't say one thing leads to another. But that's the only study that's ever said vaccinations are bad.
And it was debunked.
It was debunked 50 years ago.
Yeah. It was debunked in the 90s, and it wasn't even that it was like scientifically like proven false. Like that has definitely come after the fact. But they literally showed that this lawyer paid a scientist to write a paper that said vaccines cause autism. And so that lawyer, if I remember right, that lawyer was disbarred. That scientist lost his credentials, and anti-vaxxers have held on to that as some sort of conspiracy proof that, he was right all along.
Right.
It was like, wow, okay, man. If only I could pay some people to write some shit and then have us all get our credentials taken away to be proven true. That's crazy bullshit.
Okay. So I don't like vax shaming people. You know what I mean? Because I don't know their individual situation, but you have no problem saying if you fall into the anti-vaxxer spectrum, you're a threat to our country and you should die. And
if you don't want to take a vaccine simply because you believe in whatever crazy
George Soros
conspiracy theory out there, like, best of luck. Darwinism is real. Don't know what to tell you, but vaccines aren't risk-free. No, they're not, and I never said they were.
I'm going to get my booster after we record, which means I'll be sick for 36 hours, but then I won't feel as bad when COVID hits me, if it ever hits me. I feel like the one person that hasn't had it.
I'm waiting for the so I already got one booster, but I'm waiting to get.
Me too.
So I'm waiting for the next booster, which is going to be Omicron specific, because that one's actually going to have more protections for people getting COVID now and in the future, in the immediate future. And so that delivery is supposed to start sometime in September. So my hope is that I can make it that long. And
maybe I should wait
and get that, because I mean, don't get me wrong, like, there is definitely some benefits to getting the booster, but it is not going to be as effective as getting an Omicron booster at this point.
I like that, because I'm only a month or two stretching. I would prefer, because I'm not in dangerous contact. I'm not at risk. I'm at risk if I get it, but I'm not at risk of getting it.
So,
okay, I mean, I'd rather isolate for another month. I like that. Then I don't have to go to the grocery store today. That makes me happy.
So that's mine. But like I said, I've already been vaxxed and I've gotten the first booster.
I like that. Okay, Jeffrey, you know what happened? That Burn Pit PACT Act passed.
Yeah, after it fucking backfired on the Republican Party.
So bad. Somebody said Jon Stewart deserves the Presidential Medal of Honor, and I think Jim Jordan tainted that to a point that nobody wants it anymore. But if he deserves a medal, he deserves a medal.
Well, Jim Jordan is a taint to begin with. So.
He is a taint. The perinatal region. Jim Jordan hailing from the perinatal region. But I am so happy that the PACT Act passed, and I just can't believe that Republicans would fall for reverse psychology on this one. It
was just wild, because like they had approved everything, that they had problems with before. Nothing had changed. And then they just did this whole dick procedural move, and it fucking blew up in their face.
Right. Because Democrats supported it and Republicans immediate.
Well, Republicans supported it before, and then they were like,
as soon as Democrats supported it, they were like, oh no.
And then, the higher ups are playing damage control, going, no, this will fucking pass.
Right. I swear to God, if Joe Biden was like, I'm not jumping off this bridge, Ron DeSantis would run over it, just to do the opposite of what a Democrat does. But I'm super excited that veterans can get health and help,
especially after exposure into those burn pits.
Yeah. Is there any part of the Inflation Reduction Act that you find meaningful?
Not really.
Not really.
Like it's like it'll eventually help a little bit, but not as much as people think it will. I mean, that's realistically,
meaningful eventually,
not currently.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think what we're going to be up against is more interest rate hikes in order to tamp down on expansion. My concern, though, is that the interest rate hikes, coupled with the fact that student loan payments resume next month.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see growth slow down pretty fucking hard, pretty fucking fast. I really do.
Are. Yeah, I believe that you are. Yeah.
I think they're going to end up in bad territory.
We can talk about that. The student loans being eliminated at this point, they could have been eliminated a year ago, and they can be eliminated a year from now. But we're in stagflation, and we don't know if it's recession or inflation. So if you don't do it, and you make people pay this, you're going to cause a recession. But if you eliminate all the student loan debt and give that money to people so they can spend it, it could cause inflation. So right now, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario.
I would not say that, because right now you don't have those payments taking place.
And we have inflation.
So
student loans would be a great way to reduce inflation.
It would be student loans would potentially help reduce inflation, but the problem then is that all of all of that all of that economic spending that you've seen take place over the last 2 years.
Right.
I mean, it will come to a grinding fucking halt. Like,
Yeah, that's my point.
You will see, like, I would say, Obama level growth, potentially 1%.
What I'm trying to say is that by capping inflation, by making people more burdened financially to cap inflation isn't American. Like by eliminating wage growth or job growth to avoid inflation. Look, if everybody's doing better, that's not inflation, that's a rising tide. That's my point. And so
Right.
you need to eliminate the student loan debt. It's not going to cause more inflation that we have. It will lift everybody up.
Right.
Whereas if you make people pay this predatory system, the predatory system will succeed, but everywhere else will fail.
Right. Now there's some I would say that I've seen some stuff thrown out on both sides that would really make sense in terms of how to deal with student loans in the future, like, capping, how much gets paid back. Whether it's, an extra 25% or an extra 10% on top of what you like. I've seen some stuff that actually makes sense.
I like the 0% interest and then gradually going up as you educate yourself further. I'm okay with that. And free public education. Like somebody said, well, you should cap tuitions. And I was like, that's private. I don't see government getting involved in that.
But as far as they're already getting involved in that.
Well, I just don't think Notre Dame should listen to the government on capping its tuition rates or, Cornell University. But I think like the public college down in DuPage County, Illinois, I think, if they're giving government funding, then they should go free. Yeah. They should be free. And I think all of that should be somewhere on the internet, so where any inner city child or adult can go and learn if they want. I want free. There should be no barrier to education.
I certainly don't disagree with that. One of the things that
I know.
One of the things that we've seen is that, the reason why the economy didn't bottom out in the US the way that a lot of people expected it to was because the pause on student loans suddenly freed up people to keep businesses afloat more so than they were, when everything shut down. However, what you will see is that, there will be a lot of new businesses that end up closing when student loans go back into effect, because people are going to they're going to pick the cheapest options. They're not going to go to these mom and pop shops. They're not going to go do that kind of stuff. And that's just the reality of, when you have limited funds, you have to spend fiscally responsibly.
Yeah, you're not gonna buy food and rent and utilities and your student loans. It just can't happen. When people are paying 80% of their income for their vehicle, that's crazy that you could then think that they could afford a student loan in a home, Okay. So, well, we're just a couple economists just looking at the future of America. We're just a couple of dumbasses that can see that. So why can't economists see that the right thing to do would be to cancel student? Well, Deborah, she bought a lot of beer with her student loan money and she shouldn't have to pay it back. I don't get it.
Well, that's going to be one of the biggest problems that you're going to find then is that you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be, all these retailers right now are having to slash their financial outlook because, people are starting to move into if we're in a recession, I'm running the risk that I might lose my job. Well, if you're running the risk that you might lose your job and then you start having to repay student loans, you're going to start seeing people be really conservative with their money. And that is going to just throw the fucking brakes on the economy.
And that's obvious. That's an obvious. So why isn't it obvious for Biden?
Well, I don't know.
And I should say I don't have student loans, so I'm not promoting this because it would help me in any way. It would help people I know. That's kind of cool. But I think it was a predatory practice to begin with. At some point, it was nice. Here, get a student loan, get a grant, get whatever you need to get through it, pay it back. But suddenly it became a predatory practice, and people were charging more and more and more and expecting more and more to get paid for. And that's a problem for me, is somebody took advantage of a system that was meant to help young students.
Well, and then you also had the system, when they created ways for people to get their student loans forgiven, they became predatory, and they're like, oh, well, here's what we're going to do to make sure that it doesn't classify as, because they get their money, because these companies get their money from people paying student loans. And if those student loans get forgiven, they're not getting as much money, period, end of story.
That's right. I'm sorry about that.
You ended up with predatory practices on top of predatory practices.
So do we strangle good people, good hardworking Americans, or a predatory industry? To me, that's an obvious answer.
Well, that's, it's an obvious answer to me too.
But what I do like about this Infrastructure Reduction Act, Inflation Reduction Act, because it's such a moronic name, it doesn't do any of that. What I do like is the 15% cap and 1% on buybacks. Like, this could generate some income. It could help to shrink the deficit. So I'm all in favor of corporations and big businesses making over $1 billion getting taxed. I'm okay with that. I think it's about time.
Yep. Well, and especially where you have businesses that are growing at the rates that they have been. Like, at this point, that's another thing, is like, if you're looking to stem the flow of, if you're looking at stemming their ability to keep growing, that's certainly one way to do it. Like, that's, it's,
of course it's going to hurt the growth of companies, but I think they're growing exceedingly.
Well, you know what I mean? I think here's what most people need to understand is that in the United States, we already do have a corporate tax rate.
Of course we do, but it's the loopholes that keep them from paying it. And that's why a basic 15% is awesome.
Well, and that's the thing is like, I don't have any confidence that it's going to be 15% flat.
It's 21%. Trump lowered it from 35 to 21%, and I think they were talking about raising it to 28%. I don't know if they
this is about international businesses.
Oh, this is they were also working on the global scale and I like that
too. Internally companies have a 21%, but if you're doing business globally, for example, we do have a minimum tax for global companies, and that was 10%.
Okay.
And so that would go up to 15. Other places had higher taxes, like 15, others had lower. And so what it did was it made it so that way world companies couldn't seek tax havens.
Right.
Where they would be getting, it's, if you want to do business in this country, it's 15%.
Yeah, across the board. I like that.
So now, whether or not that's actually going to work,
like, you can't tell me that the Amazon growing a little slower would be a problem for Amazon or America.
Right.
Sorry. I mean, you record record profits and then you increase the subscription on Prime. I don't have Prime. I never believed in paying yearly to shop,
No, that's fair.
That's me. Let's see. I'm towards the end of my note, actually. The PAC Act, the Inflation Act. Are we doing the right thing in Afghanistan? A lot of people are saying, I wanted to ask this because here's the thing. Afghanistan didn't seem to really want us there when we were there. They didn't seem to mind us leaving. But once we were gone, people started crying, look what you did to Afghanistan. Is that fair that we should be blamed for leaving Afghanistan and be blamed for staying there? Which is it? Which one do you want? I'm sorry the Taliban is raining hellfire on the citizens, and I really wish the people of Afghanistan could make the choice to leave or stay, but it's not our fault that that's happening. It really isn't.
No.
Or is it?
There are some issues.
I feel like right now. Asshole.
Like right now, we have a significant amount of Taliban money that is frozen in our central banks. That people are saying could be used to, get necessary food and supplies to the Afghanistan people.
Do you think it would go to the people, though?
Oh, fuck no. Of course not.
Okay.
Anybody who's like anybody who thinks that is, a naive idealist.
Right.
That if we free that money up and it goes directly to the top of the government, that it isn't going to go towards something else.
Right.
That's not what's going to happen.
Okay. But it is their money. They should have it.
It's their money.
They're no longer a terrorist organization. They're a government.
They're not a terrorist organization. But the issue is that they can't be harboring or allowing terrorist organizations safe harbor. And we just killed Al Qaeda's number one in Afghanistan.
So that's proof that we don't have to give the money back. Okay.
So now the whole of Afghanistan, what issues?
Maybe J. Wentworth could help.
J.G. Wentworth.
Sorry.
Oh God.
I know, sorry.
Yeah, that's an earworm that'll fucking haunt me the rest of the day.
Yep. Congratulations.
So I mean, the whole of the Afghan war, like Al Qaeda had set up shop in Afghanistan. They were running training camps and all that shit there. We knew that. The biggest miscalculation was whether or not the Taliban was particularly doing anything about it. Now, luckily, so the thing about Al Qaeda and the Taliban is I don't know that they necessarily hate each other enough to do anything about each other.
Right.
But the Taliban has no love for Islamic State.
Correct. ISIS?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we call it just Islamic State because ISIS was, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIL, Islamic State in Lebanon.
They've been broken into factions as well as in the Philippines and Russia.
You've got Philippines, you've got other South Asia, you've got Africa, you've got
probably America.
Probably, to be real honest,
because Americans are stupid. They'll believe anything other than the truth.
I mean, the thing is that there really is no requirement to be a part of ISIS other than to say you're a part of ISIS or Islamic State.
So same thing with Antifa then.
Right. There is no requirement.
Antifa only exists if people say they're a part of it.
Exactly. It's not like your traditional warfare where you have a name and a flag that you constantly wear blazing. It's like a lot of the times these attacks that IS does, they claim after the fact.
Right. After an attack happens, they claim it.
Right. So
they just stopped claiming American events.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. So now looking at Afghanistan and the issues that have come on since then, I mean, realistically, like, we spend a lot of money in Afghanistan. We spend a lot of money.
Right.
Trying to train a national army, trying to
prop up a corrupt government.
Trying to instill the values of democratic freedom.
Right.
The ability, for men and women, people
20 years, right,
to show them that it's like, you can still be Islamic, but you can have all of these other freedoms that go with it.
Right.
And in the end, that fell apart so fucking fast that it was dizzying.
It was dizzying, but we telegraphed it. Like I said, Donald Trump was in negotiations with the Taliban for months and months before that. He wanted on September 11th to have them up to Camp David to finalize the accords, And
then when Biden had to pull, the final plug.
Yeah.
It was rough because
but they were ready for it. We couldn't surprise them.
They were ready for it, and the media ate Biden alive. And it was like, look, this was Trump's decision, and Biden's like, and I'm standing by it.
It was the right decision.
He's like, it doesn't matter if we stayed there 1 more month, 6 more months,
right?
1 year, 5 years, 10 years. The result was going to be the same.
But the problem is, telling them we're leaving gave them a chance to make it look like we were running.
And that's the thing. Like, I think that our the way that we left was fucking stupid. Don't get me wrong.
That's my problem. We didn't surprise them and go poof, we were gone. We were like, hey, Taliban, we're leaving on May 30th.
I mean, think about how many
Taliban just chased us as we ran away.
Think about how many forces were over there, though. Like, you're not just going to go poof, disappear overnight. Like, that was never going to be the case.
No, but you could
even if you didn't telegraph it. You think that they don't realize that, a base in Helmand province is just suddenly unoccupied?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, if you just started doing that,
they would have known him, and
you'd still lose regions.
You would have lost regions just as fast.
But it's easier to do something in secret than it is to tell them the plan.
Not
to tell
really.
your enemy the plan. I'm Mike Tyson. I'm not going to tell you I'm about to hit you with my right hook. I'm going to fucking hit you with my left.
Well, here's the difference: is that there were understandings that, as we left, the Taliban was not to do anything to U.S. troops.
Correct.
So the difference had been that, the Taliban had every right reason to, fire shots at us, fire rockets at us, do X, Y, and Z things. But by telling them we're leaving, don't fucking shoot at us.
Right.
You now have this possibility to save a bunch of soldiers' lives that don't need to die needlessly because we're fucking leaving.
But what we saw was attacks on each other. That was Taliban taking regions back that had nothing to do with our withdrawal. But it made the withdrawal look bad because they were taking over areas as we were retreating, and that looked bad. And then ISIS came in and said, we're going to make this look bad, and the third party came in and fucked it up and made it look like everything was fucked up.
It was going to be fucked no matter what, because
of course it was. Yes,
because we trained the Afghan National Army. Like, you can only
who fell in like less than a second.
Like, you can't instill in somebody the will to fight if they don't have it. Like, that's just there. I'm not saying that they were cowards, but what I'm saying is that if they didn't want it, that was never going to stand. There's no question about that.
And we were leaving, they were realists. They were like, it's the Taliban. It's not what. There's no choice here.
Well, no, there was a choice, but until the fucking president of the country fucked off with himself.
Right, leaving everybody on their own.
So in that case, then it was just like, fuck it. If he's not going to stick around, what's the fucking point in fighting?
That's what I'm saying. At some point, it became not a choice. It was lay down your arms or die, because there's no government behind you anymore.
There was no government backing. There was no money. There was no nothing. Like, it was just straight done. And so at that point, like, what the fuck are you going to do? Like, it wouldn't have mattered. Like Biden said, it's like, I may not have agreed with the way that the previous guy set it up, but it was the right result that needed to happen. You know, it wouldn't have mattered if we stayed an extra 30 days, an extra 180 days, an extra year, an extra 5 years, an extra 10 years. Well, the result was the same no matter what. It just looked fucking bad, period.
Donald Trump didn't renew our lease there and told them we had to be out at a set time. So yeah, they were going to come at us. We couldn't stay there 30 more days because they would have come full force at us, because that non-shooting contract only went to a certain time and a certain day.
Right.
After that, they had every right to fucking shoot at our troops, and our troops were consolidated in leaving, so they could have targeted us easier.
Well, and that wouldn't have looked good for them, and they knew that.
Right. But is any of that our fault? Like, I'm really sorry that people are starving in Afghanistan, but I don't feel like it's America's fault.
Well, I mean, at this point, it's like, is it our fault because we went there in the first place? I'm sure you could, if you want to start there, yeah, absolutely. We went there in the first place rather than doing, what we've done with, drones, in a lot of it. But is it going to continue to be our fault at some point? No. It was kind of like when things happened with COVID.
Yeah.
In the beginning, was it our fault? No, because, we were consistently lied to from, the Chinese government about how, this thing was spreading and how quickly it was spreading. But at some point, your own actions are what determines whether or not you are the ones that are at fault. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's still some blame left over because of how America handled things. Sure, I will accept that there probably is some, but at a certain point, it's not our problem. It's not our fault, because we we tried a number of things that didn't work. And so the only thing that we could do to address our problems in the area was just fucking leave. Like we can't get people, we can't make people be independent and productive in a place that we're not. We can't get people to, work fields in places we're not. And that was never our goal to begin with. We can't get people to do certain things in places we're not that require manual labor to feed the world. Like there's just
you can't tell us to get out and then when we get out complain that we got out. That's my problem.
We haven't done anything like block funding. We have their money, don't get me wrong, but if you think that money is going to go towards setting up agricultural infrastructure, it's a fucking joke.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So realistically,
but it's not a political weak point for Biden or Trump.
No.
Okay.
Like it wouldn't have mattered if it was Obama, if it was Trump, if it's Biden, if it's the next fucking person.
Right. Just thank God we're out. Like, thank you, Biden. Thank you, Trump, for setting that up, working together and getting that done.
Yep.
So Baker Mayfield, huh?
Baker Mayfield.
He's on Carolina.
Yep.
Fuck, you love Carolina, right?
I do. I am a Carolina fan, but
and I got Justin Fields over here. Like, fuck.
I don't know how this is gonna go.
I like Baker Mayfield. He's built like a football player to me.
I
like him.
But I was actually just having this conversation with my neighbor. It's like it doesn't matter how good a football player is. If he doesn't got any assets around him, he's just going to get his ass handed to him.
Wow. Carolina has never been built with assets for some reason.
They've had, they've been a rough and tumble team their entire existence. And
they had a tight end.
The times that they have made it far, like when they made it to the Super Bowl, like it was rough and tumble. It wasn't because that they were this well-polished machine. It was that, they were just scrappy enough to make it there. And unfortunately, they
lost. Had a bunch of journeymen though.
Right. They lost
Cam Newton and a bunch of journeymen.
Well, and then I want to say that they made it to the Super Bowl one other time too.
I think so. I was a fan as long as
there was the early 2000s, and that was like in the Jake Delhomme era.
Ooh, okay. That wasn't me. I'm a Peanut Tillman, Greg Olson, Ron Rivera fan. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and then there was that era, and Cam got his ass handed to him.
Yeah, and now he's in New England? I don't know.
He was in New England, and then he came back to Carolina. I think he retired.
Oh, okay. And then the Bears just got a new coach, and I'm so excited. Like they went back to the Lovie Smith style defense, the 4-3, and so I just got to watch those two games actually. So I was kind of excited because I don't know about Justin Field. I'd rather have a Baker Mayfield style quarterback than a runner, but they're switching to the RPOs and they're making the offense built more for him. And I'm kind of excited for the Bears for the first time, having this like fast defense, It'll
be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah. Because neither team wants to pay for quality talent. And so when they get success, it's really from the hard work of their players. And I love admiring that.
Well, and that's going to be what, unfortunately, it's like they're going to have to find some success if they want to keep those players in good health, because the only reason that Tom Brady has been as successful as he's had is because he's had great assets in front of him.
Right.
Like if you put Tom Brady in Cleveland without any of the assets that he's had, that dude is sitting on his ass a lot.
I really think his final year should be a game on every team. You know what I mean? So let's see how he performs, and
Tom Brady in playing. Well, unfortunately, with 32 teams, he wouldn't be able to do that because he'd have to play 2 games a fucking weekend.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 seasons.
Maybe 1 season with the AFC and 1 season with the NFC.
Yeah, because I'd love to see him on the Broncos.
I mean, that would be a hell of a fucking weird thing. I mean, I'd watch it, but
yeah, I'd watch it too. And until then, I don't know. I like football. I like supporting football players, so that's what I'm going to keep doing.
There you go.
Thanks for being here, Jeffrey.
Absolutely.
Love you all. Bye.
Bye.
To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. This is our moment. This is our time. To those who seek peace and security, we support you. Yes, we can. And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbow. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life.
Ask not.
Yes, we can.
What your country can do for you.
I have a dream.
Ask what you can do for your country.
My poor little children.
Yes, we can.
One day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression.
In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Welcome to Public Access America.
Yes, we can.
Sunday live streams on YouTube.
I wanted to run out of that tunnel for my dad.
On Twitter.
What?
Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Smart Radio Public, and Spotify.
Yes, we can.
Public Access America. History in the making. Making history in the making.
Picture this. You're fully immersed in your podcast because in the back of your mind, you're not trying to recall when that deadline was supposed to be or stressing to keep everyone updated on next steps. Meet Monday.com, a work management platform that makes having peace of mind easy. With Monday.com, all your work lives in one centralized place. You can automate updates to keep team members up to speed and ensure nothing falls through the cracks, even while you're enjoying your favorite podcast. To start your 14-day free trial, go to Monday.com.